it's been what? It's been like 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I'm done. You want to talk about regretting your vote? In 2 weeks, I went from the highest high to being unemployed. Lost my job last night. Got a phone call. The repercussions of what Elon Musk are doing with the USAID has real repercussions for real people. For the last 7 years, I have been a shift lead on Project Bus, where we studied to find out if the wheels on the bus went round around or not. And all of a sudden, Elon, who's not even elected, gets in, and I'm out of a job. What do I tell my family? What do I tell my kids? This isn't a joke. This USAID stuff is not a joke, man. It's affecting real people. And the worst part is, what if we never figure out? What if we never figure out if, in fact, the wheels on the bus do go round and round? Does nobody care?
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Viewers Discretion. I'm your host, Joe Neerman, aka Good Lawgic. I have so many jobs. I'm in Viewers Discretion, the following program. It's very hard to keep it straight. Very hard to keep it straight. And while this is Viewers Discretion, where I try to focus more on humanities, this is going to be more of an analysis tonight. I think we're going to be doing some analyzing, because that's what we need to do. We need to do some analyzing, because the news, in case you haven't heard it, is that a whole bunch of states ran to the Southern District of New York and said, we don't really like what Elon's doing. We don't really like what he's doing. We need to get an emergency restraining order, temporarily restraining him. And they successfully obtained a temporary restraining order, which has had all of the right-leaning figures a buzz. They've all been like freaking out. Like, what's going on here? What's going on here? I don't understand. If you read and we're going to read the order. We're going to dissect this order. We're going to dissect this order. We're going to talk about this order. We're going to talk about what it actually says, which is pretty scant. It's not uncommon for a TRO to be pretty scant. I'm not going to kid you. It's not uncommon for a TRO to be pretty scant. That's pretty common in New York. So that's not uncommon. But the breadth of the order seems excessive to a lot of folk. I agree that it is excessive. I agree that it is an order that was deeply flawed, wrong. I think that this is poor law, bad law, bad law. But I don't think it's quite the calamity that a lot of people on the right seem to think that it is. I don't think it's the blockade that the left really thinks they got. And it's important for Trump and Elon to recognize that this is not the blockade that the left would like it to be, or that many on the right seem to believe it is. So this is my way of calling out to Elon, Trump, and all the other legal minds out there who are looking to properly clamp down on the wasteful, ridiculously asinine, wasteful spending of our government, and to urge Trump to tell Elon, go full speed ahead. Now, they might need to go certain hurdles. Some of the things that people are saying about this, from people I respect, I'm like, I don't read it. I don't read it the way you do. And frankly, the only one who can enforce the TRO at the end of the day is It's the federal is the executive branch. So if I happen to be wrong and they interpret it the way that I interpret it, okay, all right. It's pretty much no harm, no foul. So, yeah, I'm not sure why it is that everyone is so freaked. I don't understand. I mean, I understand that it's bothersome that a judge who seems to be, everyone's pointing to the fact that he's an Obama appointee. This is Judge Paul Engelmeyer from the Southern District of New York that I'm referring to here. People refer to him as an Obama appointee and say that he's, acting improperly. And maybe he is acting improperly. Maybe it is what some would qualify as being bad behavior and justifiably call for his removal from office. And I'm going to talk with you about whether or not that is true and what, if anything, should be done about it. Because there is in the Constitution the notion of removing judges for bad behavior. This is not impeachment. It's almost a question as to what that would even look like to remove a judge for bad behavior. Because outside the impeachment process, we haven't, to my knowledge, ever seen a judge removed for bad behavior. So, and is that a good call? That's another thing I want to discuss during the end of this show. Assuming that there would be some way to remove him for bad behavior, is that where we want to see this whole thing go? Is that where we want to see this go? So, first, what I'd like to do with you is I'd like to break down what this order says, what it doesn't say, why it is I disagree with people, esteemed legal minds who I respect. For example, Senator Mike Lee out of Utah. I have a great deal of respect for him. I think he's very smart. He seems to interpret this as being broader than I do. And I'll show you why it is that I think they're reading it that way. There's another woman by the name of, I think, Margot Cleveland, who's a right-leaning legal analyst who seems to give it this broad read. Charlie Kirk seems to give it a broad read. Everyone's giving it this very broad read. Everyone's giving it this very, very broad read. I don't think it's that broad. I don't think it's quite that broad. And I'm going to show you what it says in the order and why it is I think that it's not quite as broad as everyone's making it out to be. So that's what we're going to do. That's the plan. That's the plan. I'm going to break it down and see what this order says. And you tell me. Maybe you'll think I'm wrong. Maybe you'll think I'm right. But we'll go from there. Let me get these out of the way first. Pam Ronning saying, "Let's get this party started." Amen. Let's do it. Let's get this party started. Indeed. That's a little too loud. All right, that's a little echoey. Daniel Weimer gifting. God bless you, brother. Gifting 10 new members to the following. Welcome to the following. Who did you bring in here to the following? The following people following courtesy of Daniel Weimer. Who did you bring? Where do I find you? It's going to be here somewhere. I know it's here. Following 10 people gifted memberships to the following courtesy of Daniel Weimer. That includes Justin Penn, La Sombra, Bob Jones, Have Tome, Marissa Tome, Have Tome, Jack Riley, MDW, Frosted Sleet, Cindy Bowman, Ezra's Art, Atelier, and Raven, she, shim, sham are my pronouns. Welcome to the following, Raven, and all the rest of you who are brought into the following, which is not at all a cult type of cult. Not at all. And I'm very, very much not the leader of the following. I'm just a host. I'm here with you guys. Just sharing some. Oh, thank you, Daniel. I appreciate you. That's very kind. That's very, very kind of you indeed. I need the USAID money. I have not been on their payroll. I've never gotten a dime from USAID, and frankly, I think it's wrong. All these other 2-bit operations are getting tons of money from USAID. I'm a 2-bit operation. I say, F it. Time to go full Andrew Jackson and tell the court, mighty fine opinion you got there. Now where's your army to enforce it as it goes up to SCOTUS? Well, I think that, see, I'm not crazy about that option. But I think that I don't think it's quite as broad as everyone makes it out to be. Andrew Jackson provided precedents. Yeah. Mm-hmm. To analyze how U.S. aids has analyzed U.S. taxpayers. That's definitely worth $10 million right there. You need a whole study on that. Biden ignored the Supreme Court regarding his loan forgiveness. Damn the torpedo. Full speed ahead. Well, I do say full speed ahead. That part I definitely agree with you. Democrats went after judges for improper money, but supported judge to hide corruption and fraud. Yep. They are shady AF. Shady AF. All right, let's take a look at this order. Let's take a look at this order. So we can all be on the same page here as to what this temporary restraining order is. Now, in order to get a temporary restraining order, you have to show a likely success in the merits. Irreparable harm, meaning not financial harm, which is usually reparable, but another type of harm, which that I think that they actually have here, assuming that they would win. And balancing of equities. Balancing of that the decision between giving it versus not giving it, implementing it versus not implementing it is better. Balancing of equities, we're going to see it's a little strange, some of the things they ordered, but let's take a look at it. Let's pull it open. Let's pull it open here. All right. United States District Court, Southern District of New York. God, that's not big enough. So now there have been several actions that have been brought. There was one that was brought by the labor union, which was said not to have standing. This one, there's not much attention paid to the issue of standing. Does the state of New York have standing to come after Trump in his official capacity and Scott Bessent in his official capacity as Secretary of the U.S. Department of the Treasury? I'm not sure what their standing is. You sort of would think that the judge would give some attention to what their standing is. What is the harm done to the state of New York? What is the theory under which the state of New York or the state of Arizona or any of these other couple dozen states have a viable claim here? The court sitting its Part 1 capacity this evening received an application for a temporary restraining order filed by attorneys general of the 19 states identified as plaintiffs above. The states, let's do a little drawing here. So he's got 19 states that have come in here. We're going to make that thicker so we can actually appreciate just how significant my comments are. That's a little too thick. The state's lawsuit challenges a new policy by the United States Department of Treasury at the direction of the president, the Secretary of the Treasury, which, as alleged, expands access to the payment systems of the Bureau of Fiscal Services, which they're going to call over here BFS, to political appointees. So now you're giving it to political appointees and special government employees. Now, we know that this is referring to Doge, right? I mean, that's is referring to Elon, Doge, and everyone working under Elon's purview. So the states contend this policy, inter alia, that's a very fancy Latin term which lawyers use all the time, especially in an order like this. Inter alia means amongst other things. So we're going to list off some of the things here, but there are other things that we're not bothering to list off. We don't want this to be deemed the exhaustive list. So inter alia is a Latin term that lawyers use all the time like that because you're always afraid you're going to miss something. So which inter alia violates the APA. The Act. I'm going to undo that one because I don't like how that went. I'm not as fluid with the pen as Mr. Robert Gouvet is. 5 USC 551. So they're saying there may be other problems here, but one of the definite problems we have here is a violation of 5 USC 551 in multiple respects. Could be others, but definitely there's that one is what they're claiming. It exceeds the statutory authority of the Department of Treasury, violates the separation of powers doctrine. Okay. It violates the take care clause of the United States Constitution. The states seek declaratory and injunctive relief, meaning that the relief they're saying is we want an order from the court saying, stop. Later this evening, upon the state's successful filing of their submissions, this matter was assigned on a permanent basis to Jeanette A. Vargas. Now, that's an important element here that no one's really talking about. This is all signed off by Judge Paul Engelmeyer. You might be saying, why is it not staying with Judge Paul Engelmeyer? Well, the way things work when it comes to a TRO, you have to understand a little bit about what a TRO is. So a TRO, as I said, is you're looking to have the court step in and make something happen right away. Now, a TRO is issued without there being much opportunity, if any, for a response from the other side. Accordingly, it has a very short shelf life. It does not last for a very long period of time. The way things work, at least particularly procedurally in the state of New York, which fortunately for me, where this is where I practice and this is where this case is from, you'll start with a TRO and you're hoping to have that TRO converted into what's called a preliminary injunction. So a TRO is basically only until we have a chance for the other side to put in papers and come back here and argue. It's never supposed to be beyond 10 days, 14 days on the outside. And usually it will be brought back in within a week, as this one is brought back in for next Friday. The time period for the response from the other side is very short. Rarely will they give them the plaintiff an opportunity to reply. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's a rare thing for them to allow a reply because everything's happening in such a condensed time. Now, seeing as how we'll see that the timing parameter here, if we sort of skirt ahead to the end of this thing, we'll see over here that. And one of the things that a TRO will do is they'll say, how do you serve this TRO? And whether it's personal service in this particular case, it's got to be filed in dependence on the counsel by February 8th, 12 noon. And they also tell them that they have to get their paper, the opposition has to be filed by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, which is a little bit strange. It's a little bit quick. Why it has to be 5 p.m. on Tuesday? Why not Thursday, Wednesday? Now, he's giving them a reply, which is kind of ridiculous also. That's why he's giving this early date of Tuesday, is to give an opportunity for them to reply by Thursday. That's almost the tip of the hand right there, where the judge is saying, I like the plaintiff's side here a lot, and I want to give them an opportunity to reply. So I'm going to in order to give them an opportunity to reply, since this has a very short shelf life, I'm going to make the defendant's answer that much more quickly. So that'll give some time for the plaintiffs to respond and put in what's called a reply. So you have your initial moving papers, and you have the opposition filed by the other side, and reply that's filed by the initial party, the plaintiffs. So over here, what's happening is instead of giving the defendants until Thursday, which would be kind of normal, more standard, and they say you don't get a chance to reply on a TRO, this judge, mysteriously, not throwing any shade, just telling you what seems weird to me. It seems weird to say that they have to come back the defendant has to come back by Tuesday, and then we're gonna have you come in by Friday, on Thursday, and then return here to come back here on Friday, which is when this is returnable for. Now, so that's the timing there on that. Okay. So a TRO dies. You know when this TRO dies automatically? When they come in and have their return date, Friday. On Friday, the judge is supposed to decide, am I converting this into a preliminary injunction, or am I not converting it into a preliminary injunction? Which judge is going to be deciding that? Whether or not a preliminary injunction would have a much longer lifespan. That would last throughout the life of the litigation. So the purpose of a preliminary injunction is basically to say, what is going to be happening? We recognize that a court case can go on for a lengthy period of time. What is going to happen during that period of time? While they're battling it out with each other, what's going to be happening behind the scenes when we're outside the courtroom. What are they allowed to do? What are they not allowed to? And this comes up in a myriad of infinite number of settings as to, okay, what is going to be happening? When I say infinite number of settings, someone gets a TRO. Let's say someone, you have your next door neighbor is cutting down some trees. You don't want them to cut down trees. You say that they're your trees. They say, no, it's on my property. I'm allowed to remove the trees. So the plaintiff now sees you get the bulldozers out there. You're going to tear down the trees. So your next door neighbor comes along and gets a TRO. And that TRO says, hey, they're about to tear down the trees tomorrow. I need you to get an order saying that they can't tear down those trees, because once those trees are torn out, it's never going to be the same again. That's an irreparable harm. And here's all the proof that it's on my property and it's not, and that he's tearing down my trees. So let me get this injunction to stop them, run to court. And then the court will sign off on this quick thing saying, here's a TRO, come back here next week and try, convincing me whether or not we should allow these trees to be torn down. More often than not, in a case like that, then they'll come back a week, 5 days later, after both sides have had a chance to put in papers now. And the party that wants to tear down the trees will be like, no, that's on my property. Here's my proof that it's on the property line. And then the judge will be like, well, I'm still not sure. We might need to have some inspector come down there, some surveyor come down there, try and figure out whose property it is, who owns the trees, all that other stuff. In the interim, let's put in a preliminary injunction. Leave things as they are. In case, because it's not killing anyone to leave the trees there. And once you remove the trees, the balancing equity seems it's fair to leave the trees there. So for the life of this, so they'll write a preliminary injunction which says for the remainder of this case, until it's actually adjudicated, those trees are going to remain standing. That's your classic type of way of, it starts as a TRO. That TRO only lasts until the date that you next come back before the judge. At that point in time, it gets converted into what's called a preliminary injunction, and that's like a more solid TRO. It has the same effect. It's got injunctive relief. It's the same type of injunctive relief, but because both sides have now had a chance to be heard on this issue, instead of it being something that's just lasting for a few days, that was only put in there as a stopgap temporary measure to try and prevent a potential terrible wrong that's irreparable from occurring. But now we're going to actually say what's going to happen during the life of this entire battle between the plaintiff and defendant. So now we're going to say, okay, let's try to leave things as they are and say you can't do things until this litigation is ultimately resolved. So frequently when you come in at for an injunctive relief, what happens is, when you're seeking to obtain a temporary restraining order, what happens is the court will assign someone as an emergency judge. You might be coming in there during crazy hours. Right? I mean, it's Saturday morning and I see the bulldozers here. I got to get to court right now. Have papers drafted up really quickly. Right? So when you have crazy hours, they'll have judges who are assigned to handle things on an emergency basis really 24/7. Now, getting access and getting in there can be difficult, but like the point being, that judge is not the one who's assigned to handle a case. They're only assigned to handle the TRO. And then with respect to determining who the judge is on the case, that they'll come in and pick up the ball after, from the preliminary injunction stage and onward. This emergency judge is rarely the one who handles the preliminary injunction, because they're going to end up assigning it to come back at a date and time when the judge who's going to be handling this case moving forward is the judge on this case and during his or her normal schedule. So that's why when we're likely not going to see Judge Engelmeyer anymore, this guy here, this guy over here is the judge who was assigned on an emergency basis. But the actual judge who's going to be handling this is, what was her name? Jeanette something? Jeanette Vargas. Let's pull up here to see what we can see about Jeanette Vargas. Jeanette Vargas. Well, she brand spanking new. She is brand new. I mean, she's a Biden judge. Judge Ann Vargas over here. She went to Yale, and she assumed office appointed by Biden on November 6th. So she's one of his. She was appointed the day after the election. Well, that's probably not what Trump and Elon want to see. That's unlikely that they want to see that. I'm not going to kid you. Well, anyhow. So that's and the way they pick the judge in the federal court is they literally have all the judges' names on like little balls. It sounds crazy. But the last time I filed, which was a long time ago in the federal court, they literally will take a thing and go spin this big giant wheel around with all the balls bouncing around in there like it's lotto, and then the balls out for your judges. That's the way they do it. So the idea is this way you're not hand selecting a judge. Speaking of this issue of hand selecting a judge, I did see one attorney point out that it's very possible that the firm that was handling this knew that this was the right time to go in here. Why is this an emergency? All this stuff hasn't going on for 2 weeks. Why is this an emergency on a Friday night? Why is this such a massive emergency? And it could be that they claimed it was a massive emergency because they liked the judge who was, you can tell who's the judge sitting in on an emergency basis. So the plaintiff states here knew which judge was going to be deciding this application. Here's another little interesting wrinkle about this whole thing. Supposedly, there was no effort to reach out to Trump or anyone from the Treasury Department, and the judge just signed off on this. Now, that's not crazy uncommon, but normally, when you're talking about a government agency, there would be a phone call from the judge to somebody. Because you're looking to stop the government from doing someone. There would be a phone call, and there would be an inquiry with a little heads up, hey, I have this application here. What response, if any, do you have? And there would be just an off-the-cuff response from someone, some attorney for the government who would presumably be opposing the application. That is standard operation for how judges sitting in that emergency relief section will operate, because they don't want to be issuing, they're not supposed to want to be issuing decisions and TROs without hearing anything at all from the other side. All they know is what's written in front of them. So it's a little bit of a strange thing if, in fact, they fail to reach out to the government, someone from the Treasury Department, someone from Trump's team. Alina Habba is a personal attorney. He's named in this, in which capacity? As President of the United States. Maybe it wouldn't be appropriate. But anyway, yeah. There's no reference here to he's named in his official capacity. Someone should have been reached out to. And the fact that if, in fact, no one was reached out to, that only lends further legitimacy to the claims that this whole application is rather sus. The court has reviewed the affirmation of Colleen Faraday, dated February 7th, in support of the state's motion for a TRO, the state's memorandum of law in support of that motion for temporary restraining order dated February 7th, and the complaint. The court's firm assessment is that for the reasons stated by the states, they will face irreparable harm in the absence of injunctive relief. That is both because the risk of the new policy presents of the disclosure of sensitive and confidential information. So the first problem we have, why is this such an emergency that this has to get done? Why we need to have a TRO here? Because there's this disclosure of this sensitive information, sensitive and confidential information. Okay, I guess you can understand why that would be like a big deal. Plus, you have the heightened risk here that the systems in question will be more vulnerable than before to hacking. What is that about? Why would you say it's more vulnerable than before? What is that based on? That sounds kind of strange. Sounds kind of strange indeed. But those are the two. So we have two arguments here. One is, oh my God, this is terrible. I need like a pen or something. One is that, hey, that there's going to be this disclosure of sensitive information, and two is that you got the systems will be hacked. Okay. Court's further assessment is that, again, for reasons given by the states have shown a likelihood of success, with the states' statutory claims presenting as particularly strong, meaning I'm a big fan of the states here. The court's further assessment is that the balance of equities, for the reasons stated by the states, favors the entry of emergency relief. Now, normally, when you're talking about balancing of equities, right, you can understand, it's pretty easy, I think, for anyone to understand likelihood of success. Are you more likely to win or not? So he thinks, I think you got a really good chance here. I think you got a really good chance. When you talk about balancing of equities, it's like, who's being harmed here? What's more equitable? What's fairer? To stop them or to not stop them? Now, when you're talking about, usually balancing of equities is a well-regarded concept in American law. Particularly, I've seen it in New York over and over again. I could probably pull up case law from New York specifically if I had to, which says that the balancing of equities favors the status quo. Whatever is currently there, we're going to leave it there and not let new people come along and change the status quo. The example I gave you with the trees and the bulldozer is, let's let the trees stand. They're there already. Let's leave them as they are, not tear them down. And that's balancing equities, favoring the status quo. Now, if we're talking about favoring the status quo, to the extent an injunctive relief is saying, stop them from going further in investigating, that would be consistent with the status quo. Right now, certain records are beyond the purview of certain persons, so let's not allow them to further invade in and get access to those records. What about records already in their possession? Well, status quo would be leave them in their possession. But that is not what this judge does. This judge says, no. To a certain degree, you have to destroy certain records. But let's see exactly what they say, what he says here. What is his order? So he gives really a very, very brief synopsis as to why he's granting the TRO. What does he say? He says, well, there's two things that are really concerning to me here. That there's this disclosure of sensitive confidential information and they could be hacked. And I think that they're going to win the case, and balancing equities is on their side. Why balancing equities on their side? I don't know. With respect to destroying documents, hard to imagine. But okay. I guess you can say that, like, it's fairer to destroy it. I don't know. Just because it favors the status quo doesn't mean it's always the status quo. All right. But what exactly does he stop them from doing? What does he make them do? And this is where I think everyone is sort of flawed. I don't like this order. No one should ever misunderstand me as saying I think that this is good law. I don't think it's good law. My personal opinion is this is terrible law. This is bad law. But even though it's bad law, what exactly is the law purporting to do? Well, number one, it says, orders the defendant show cause before Jeanette A. Vargas at courtroom 14C, 500 Pearl Street at 2 p.m. on Friday, February 14th. So next Friday, everyone get your butts back in here in front of Judge Vargas. And at that time, they should explain why an order should not be issued, meaning I'm anticipating the judge is going to issue a preliminary injunction. And if you are the defendants don't want that order to be entered, You need to explain why it should not be entered. This is not unusual language. Quite the contrary. This is exactly the language that is invariably put into a TRO. They sort of frame it like why in order. There's always, it's always framed with an assumption that it's going to be granted. That's just the nomenclature that's used. That's not implying it will be granted. It's just, that's just the language. That's the format that is standard. That you tell the side that's opposing it, if you don't want this to be entered, get in here and explain why it should not be entered. So that's why you say why an order should not be issued pursuant to Rule 65, which is what relates to injunctions, the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, preliminarily enjoin defendants during the pendency of this action, meaning for as long as this action is going on, from granting to political appointees. So what's going to happen here? We're going to be granting political appointees, or that's one group, special government employees, and any government employee detailed from an agency outside the Treasury Department. Outside the Treasury Department. This is a very key language here, which I don't know why it is that a lot of people seem to be missing this, that we're going to be enjoining, stopping people who are outside the Treasury Department from accessing Treasury Department payment systems or any other data maintained by the Treasury Department containing personally identifiable information. So first and foremost, the only thing that they're not able to access is information that has personally identifiable information. What does that mean? What exactly is personally identifiable information? To me, that's a social security number, perhaps an EIN. Personally identifiable information. I don't think that means a name, like a name of a company. Personally identifiable information. To me, we were talking about information that is, what was his logic here? Is disclosure of sensitive and confidential information. Sensitive and confidential information is not the name the New York Times, not Politico. It's not Iraqi Sesame Street. It's the EIN for these companies. It's the social security number of different persons who might have access. So what does this mean? What this means is, in theory, you could have things, to my read of it, and this is why I think that this is part of the reason I think Trump should tell Elon, go full speed ahead. That in theory, you can simply redact that personal information and then examine. So Elon's not going to have the EIN for the New York Times. He doesn't care about that. We just care about how much money was given to the New York Times. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think there's anything in this order that precludes him from getting access to that. Or for why the monies were given. What objective they had. Is that personally identifiable information? No. So the only thing this is really keeping him from accessing whoever is included here, whoever is listed in here, which just definitely seems to be addressing to, dear Elon, get the hell out. Dear Doge, go away. I agree. I grant you that it's that. I don't think it applies to Scott Bessent, who's the Secretary of the Treasury, because he's not outside the agency here. And even though he is a political appointee, I think the reason that they reference the political appointees here is not to say anyone, as soon as you're a political appointee, now you're no longer allowed to access. That doesn't make any sense. It's that we're not saying that your position as a political appointee is now going to enable you to have special access into the Treasury. But I don't think that excludes the political appointee being the treasurer. I wouldn't read it that way. And there's two possibilities. Technically, Scott Bessent is a political appointee. He's the Secretary of the Treasury appointed by Trump. Okay. But what I'm trying to understand is, I read that as saying, if you're a political appointee, Pam Bondi, that does not give you access. And there's a thought that, or maybe that Elon is some sort of political appointee, or whoever, Tom Homan, that they don't have special access by dint of being an appointee. Well, Scott Bessent here is not coming in here because he's an appointee. It's because his role is that he's overseeing the Treasury. Now, it could be that my read is wrong. I'm not going to deny the fact that my read is wrong. What is the harm in Scott Bessent going in there? Well, he's going to get prosecuted for it? Like what's going to happen? And seeing as how it doesn't make sense to read him in there, it's an illogical thing to put in there. I mean, think of how stupid that is, that you have records here that Scott Bessent's underlings would be allowed to access and he would not be allowed to access. That doesn't seem to make any sense to anyone who has half a brain. So that being the point, that being the point, the only logical way to read this very poorly worded order is that it's not applying to Scott Bessent. Let's assume, either I'm right, that it's not applying to Scott Bessent, or sometime in the future, what would happen if I'm wrong? Sometime in the future, Democrats, the states, these attorney generals from the state of New York, state of New Jersey, and a dozen, 17 other states are going to come forward and say, hey, this court said that it's not that no political appointee is supposed to be looking at these records. Scott Bessent is Secretary of Treasury. He's a political appointee, and he was looking at these records. He's not allowed to be looking at these records. And I would come back to the court and saying, I don't read that as applying to him, because that doesn't make any sense. Let them go make the argument that this is what it's saying, that that's what the order says. And then, in fact, if it was saying that, so now what? Is he going to be prosecuted? Pam Bondi going to start saying, oh, I'm coming after you for breaking federal law here? I don't think so. I think it's a reasonable read. It's sufficiently reasonable read to say that Scott Bessent is not included in this order, that the worst thing you'll have is you'll get a scolding from the court saying, no, I did mean Scott Bessent. And even though it sounds retarded, that's what I meant. So you're not supposed to go in there. Okay. So at that point, it'll be like, all right. So I guess he's supposed to apply to Scott Bessent also. Who cares? Who cares? Now, I'm not saying this in an Andrew Jackson type of way. Andrew Jackson, those of you who see this continual reference, he basically told the court to go F itself. It's like, okay, it's nice you wrote an order. Do you have an army that will help you back it up and actually get that order enforced or not? Oh, you don't? Oh. So I'm going to do what I want then because you're powerless. That's what Andrew Jackson said. And a lot of people are saying that's what Trump and Elon should do. Just basically say, that's very nice you gave an order. No one cares. We don't care about your stupid order. I don't like that because I do think that to the extent we can maintain the bounds of what we function as a society with, I think that's a healthier direction. And certainly as an officer of the court, I would never, ever, ever countenance the idea of someone ignoring a direct order of the court. My point is, I don't think that Scott Bessent is included in this order as I understand this very poorly worded order. So I don't think it applies to him. And if I end up being wrong, well, in that case, you cross that bridge when you come to it. But first, you force the states to come forward and say, no, get a judge to come back and say it does include Scott Bessent. But I would be moving forward and saying it doesn't. And then I would also be moving forward under the expectation that personally identifiable information here is tax ID numbers, social security numbers. Things that people would use to commit identity fraud. That's what personally identifiable information is. All the other information in there, not excluded. There's no requirements on it. Orders that sufficient reason having been shown, therefore, pending the hearing of the state's application for preliminary injunction, meaning between now and next Friday. The defendants are, what are they supposed to do? 3 things, right? I think there's 3 things here. Yeah, 3. Okay. Number 1, you're restrained from granting access to any Treasury Department payment record, system, or any other data system maintained by the Treasury Department containing personally identifiable information. So restrained. The defendants So this is Scott Bessent. See, it would say Scott Bessent, and here's another reason why it doesn't apply to the Bessent. Okay, another reason it doesn't apply to Bessent particularly is because it wouldn't list him as a political appointee. It would just say Scott Bessent, defendant, is not allowed to access. It doesn't say defendant cannot access. It simply says the political appointees cannot access. So since it says political appointees and doesn't reference defendant Scott Bessent, it seems as if he's not part of that. However, what it's saying here now is the defendants, that means Trump and Bessent, are restrained from granting access to any Treasury Department payment record, payment system, or any other data systems maintained by the Treasury Department containing personal identifiable information and or confidential financial information of payees other than to civil servants with a need for access to perform their job duties within the Bureau of Fiscal Services, who have passed all background checks and security clearances and taken all information security training called for in federal statutes and Treasury Department regulations. Okay. Now, this is quite a mouthful. Again, as I'm reading this here, so now it basically is telling me, and this is how I would understand this, is that you, Scott Bessent, and you, Donald Trump, are restrained from giving access to those records, those or data systems maintained by the Treasury Department, which have personally identifiable information. Okay, what is to stop Scott Bessent from creating a brand new mirror of what is exactly there, and in the mirror file, taking out the EIN numbers and all Social Security numbers? How long would it take to do that? To me, I would think that if you're someone who's a computer expert, it probably wouldn't take you more than 9 minutes. That's my guess. Going slow. I could be wrong. I'm not a computer expert. What the heck do I know? I'm simply saying to just take out those, and now you have a new data system which doesn't have any personal identifiable information, confidential financial information of payees. There you go. It's that simple. Scott Bessent is not restrained from doing that. And that's consistent with the objective of the order, because the objective of the order, as stated by Judge Engelmeyer here, is to protect from the disclosure of sensitive and confidential information or vulnerability to hacking. It's not a matter of vulnerability to hacking that anyone's going to get their sensitive EIN and be able to come in there and create and engage in identity fraud. There you go. There you go. It's really not that hard. If anything, you can argue it defeats the entire application altogether. The whole basis of their application is, oh my God, people are going to get these Social Security numbers. How can you give out? All right. They're not dealing with Social Security numbers. Now, Elon actually put out a tweet. Now, that's number one. Number two, let's go through the rest of this. Restrain from granting access to all political appointees. I don't know what political appointees that he's talking about here, or even thinking of. Special government employees. I think that's meant to be Elon. And government employees detailed from an agency outside the Treasury Department, which is definitely a reference to folks from Dolge, to any Treasury Department payment record, payment system, or any other data systems maintained by the Treasury Department containing personally identifiable information and or confidential financial information of payees. Again, I would read this as limited as possible, and I would say, to me, this is all talking about EINs and Social Security numbers. And there you go. It's really that simple. In order to direct any person prohibited above from having access to such information, records, and systems, but who has had access to such information, record, and systems since January 20, 2025, to immediately destroy any and all copies and material downloaded from the Treasury Department's records and systems, if any. So if they had access to personally identifiable records and they downloaded stuff with EINs and social security numbers, in that case, they're obligated to destroy them to be compliant with this Section 3 of the order. Again, I don't think they've had anything like that. I saw a tweet from Elon. What is this? This is why I'm saying I don't think this is nearly the big deal that everyone says it is. What's that? What is that? I'm gonna have to go through Elon's tweets. My God, that sounds like work. He's a voracious tweeter. I think we're gonna have to do it. I think I'm gonna have to do it. Sorry. If I can ever get early on an Elon tweet, it's good for my social media presence. Get something real quick here. All right. Sorry. I got sidetracked. I got sidetracked by Elon. I got to find this thing. I should have saved this. He's so aggressive. This is what I was looking for. Dan Goldman, which is it's not his Dan Goldman rep account. I don't know if this is different Dan Goldman. So it wasn't just a freeze on Elon Musk and Doge accessing Americans' personal data. He was ordered to destroy any data they already took. Elon Musk confirmed he's already followed the court order. And he said, "We don't have any personal data of Americans, you corrupt moron." And if they don't have any personal data, this whole application has no bearing on Doge or Elon, because the whole argument that the states are making is like, you're accessing personal data. I'm not going for personal data. There you go. It makes things much easier. Much easier. All right. What do we got here? TRO to buy time so they can shred the docs. I don't think they're able to shred the docs. I also don't assume that people working in the Treasury, the underlings there, are looking to shred the docs. It's like they already have, it's too late for them to do it. I understand the concern you have, Kernath. I'm just saying, I think they're just generally trying to stall time. I don't think they have access to be able to shred the docs. That would have been done under the Biden administration. And here's the thing. I think there's just way too many documents to shred. I think there are way too many documents that I don't think they can shred them all. I think it's too late. Whose pockets we got to grease to gag Letitia James? I'm going to find a big enough gag first. Balls out for your judges. So that's how they do it. Good luck to 2025. Did I say balls out? I don't remember saying balls out. Balls out. Balls out. I don't remember saying that, but I'll take it. Democrats are scared the corruption will be exposed. Hell yeah, Black Dragon. Remember, for 5 months. There you go. There you go. John Delaney, Joe gets documents marked up in red and is against documents redacted. Well, stop it. Stop it. Stop mocking my incompetence with a red pen. I'm terrible at that. It's much harder than it looks. You're doing it with a mouse. He uses a pen. Urzelian says, Joe, on Briar News, no matter what a judge in Mississippi declares the federal machine gun ban, on Briar News, no matter what, a judge in Mississippi declared the federal machine gun ban unconstitutional? Really? That's great. Oh, that's great. Oh, my God. Watch some heads explode. Oh, some heads are going to be exploding. Oh, that is great. That is good news. All right. Where was we? Yeah, so if he doesn't have any personal data, it doesn't mean anything at all. But I do want to look with you at Article 3. And there's nothing to shred. And Scott Bessent, so first and foremost, I don't think it applies to Scott Bessent. I don't think the judge even thinks it applies to Scott Bessent. I don't think it has anything to do with him. Scott Bessent is simply prohibited, restrained from allowing others to access in the future. That's what the part where says defendants, that's what he's looking to do. But what's interesting here is that the real question is, are they accessing personal information or not? And it doesn't seem like it's that hard to just have the Treasury Department create mirror records, which just don't have any personal information. No EINs. No nothing. No social security numbers. Everyone's protected. Look, and let's face it, I don't want my personal records accessed by Elon or anyone. You don't want yours accessed by Elon or anyone. So yeah, I don't think that's really. I'm okay with restricting the access to personal information. I'm totally okay with that. But let them do their research and expose all the corruption that we see going on here, because that corruption runs deep and is foul. It is foul. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Article 3 of the United States Constitution, because I think that's an important thing. Talking about the idea of removal for bad behavior. All right. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior and shall at stated times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. So what does this language here mean when it says during good behavior? Now, we haven't really seen anyone removed for bad behavior. The only process, sometimes judges have been impeached. It's not really a big national story usually when that happens, but they have been impeached from time to time. They can be removed for bad behavior. We've seen judges thrown off the court when they've been caught getting bribes in state courts, or, that would happen, I guess. Yeah, I don't know what the process. I'm just saying, like, I'm not sure. I don't think we tend to think of the impeachment, because impeachment does apply to judges as well. That's how you get them off the court. But what if they don't have? What if they have bad behavior? What if they're ignoring their constitutional duties? What if they're just a political hack? In theory, they can be removed. But here's the concern with that. It's the same concern you have with packing a court. It's the exact same concern. Once that doorway is opened and judges are removed for bad behavior, and that becomes a thing of judges being removed for bad behavior, I can assure you that the next time a Democrat gets elected, Clarence Thomas will be removed for bad behavior, Alito will be removed for bad behavior, Gorsuch will be removed for bad behavior. They will all be removed for bad behavior. And that is a very dangerous road for us to go down. It's a very, very dangerous road for us to go down. They'll just say, look, this guy's a political hack, and we disagree with the logic of his or her reasoning, and we're going to remove him for that. So every judge who's actually a good judge, who's actually just trying to apply the law in a way that's consistent with the Constitution, will suddenly see that they become victims of political hackery. So that's the question I want to throw at you right now: is would you want to see this removal for bad behavior become a thing? But what I definitely want to stress to you is all these people who are screaming about how this is such a calamity and that this judge is a hack. Do I think this judge is politically motivated? I think it reads to me that way. There's a lot of issues he could have and should have addressed in this order and didn't, like standing. And say, why is it the states have standing here to be standing up? At least walk us through it, that they're coming in here in defense of people in loco parentis, like as a parental type of role. Just justify for us how it is that this is a legitimate order, that the states have a concern. Is it the states' social security numbers that's going to be exposed? No. Why do these attorneys general have any role in trying to protect exposure to hacks or disclosure of sensitive financial information? Where the hell are they getting that basis from? You want to say that there's an loco parentis? Okay, but at least you have to sort of walk down and just pin yourself in that the reason I think the states have standing is because of this reason. And until you do that, it's very unclear what the basis of that standing is. So, and even though, frankly, I'm not a big fan of trying to knock cases out on the basis of standing, it is something that, courts regularly do. I don't know. You say the state has no authority in this matter. Why? I mean, what if they come in? The concept of in loco parentis is that they're basically sort of playing a parental role for people who can't stand up for themselves. Would SCOTUS not be exempt and see appeals on bad behaviors of judges? No, it doesn't. There's no reason for that to think that they would. This is where the establishment of the judicial power. This is where we have a Supreme Court from. The only court that's really referenced is the Supreme Court. One Supreme Court, and other inferior courts as Congress creates. The judges of the court, the Supreme Court, shall hold their offices during good behavior. So that's definitely referring to Supreme Court justices as well as all other judges. I personally think they should use the Patriot Act and throw this judge in the black cell for terrorists. Maybe they finally would turn that monstrosity too. That'd be hilarious. That would be. Is it normal to have the hearing without representation from opposing side and tenants to object? So I covered this at the very outset when I was talking about this. But basically, a TRO will often have only one side there. In order to get a TRO, you sort of need to give notice to the other side that you are going to appear. You're not supposed to, the court doesn't like issuing any order. Let's put this case aside. General rule is you have to notify the other side with 24 hours notice saying at this time, at this place, we will be appearing here seeking to get injunctive relief. And when you fill out an affidavit saying I fulfill this requirement and I notified the opposing parties of our intent to be here by email, by telephone message, whatever, and they're supposed to give that notice. I don't know what happened in this particular case. And the idea is that way an attorney, even though they haven't read the papers, have an opportunity to at least be there in the room and argue vociferously against the institution of that TRO. Sometimes they don't show up. It would be weird for them to have gotten notice and not shown up. That would be weird. I'm not going to kid you. You would think that some attorney on behalf of Trump and or Bessent would come in there and be arguing against it. For example, when I was looking to get that gag order lifted and I brought a TRO, I had to give notice to the Office of Court Administration. I had to give notice to the District Attorney's Office and even to Trump and his counsel before I was able to go in there and try and get a TRO. And they sent attorneys down there to argue against me. So this is a great question you're asking here, Terry, Lily. So it's because they probably were put on notice. It's very weird for the court to dispense with that notice obligation. Very weird. So they probably did get that notice. I don't know if there was someone who made oral argument on behalf of Trump or not. Furloughs the U.S. Marshal Service so the judges can't enforce their orders. I'll tell you right now, what does that mean? I don't know how they would enforce it. If Scott Bessent and Trump read it the way I read it and says, hey, A, it doesn't apply to Scott Bessent. And B, personal identifiable records, that's social security numbers and EINs. Loving all the things going on since post day one. Indeed, Shelley. He's been phenomenal. Like whatever it is we could have possibly hoped for during the first couple of weeks, he's exceeded that by a factor of 5 minimum. Go Doge, ready for treason charges to hopefully come out for the crimes and also for no IRS. Well, I'm not sure how we get rid of the IRS so fast, but I agree with you that what he's done so far has been exceptional. So I'm going to open the phone lines up, and I'm curious. I'd like to hear your take as to whether or not you think we should start using this bad behavior on bad judges. Or you think that that's a dangerous road to go down? Yeah. Depends on how high your expectations were, but yeah. All right, number to call in is 972-454-0703. You're going to see it in a banner. It's going to be going across 972-454-0703. 972. Here's that banner. Number.
Call from
Tony from Rhode Island.
Tony,
Yes, sir.
how are you?
Am I right?
So what do you think? You want to see them engage the bad behavior?
It's, yeah, of course. I mean, what do you do with bad cops?
Okay. But don't you think that if we start doing that, that's going to lead potentially to this, just like, packing the court and stuff like that? It's just going to be this never-ending cycle of every judge being removed as soon as they issue an order.
Supreme Court judges are appointed for life.
They also have bad behavior, though. It applies to them.
Allegedly, sure. But, I mean, the Constitution provides for that type of thing. There's checks and balances. That's why we have these types of things.
So, okay, in what sense do you think that bad behavior would apply only to lower court judges and not to the Supreme Court judges?
And the same way it would with bad police officers. Police officers are generally given an immunity, given their job, but if they act outside their job, if they aren't doing what they should be doing, they are no longer immune. They no longer have that protection.
Okay.
Judges should have the same. They should be held to the same standard, if not a higher standard, I would argue. Like, even their personal lives could come into question, whereas what a police officer does on his personal recognizance should matter less.
Yeah, but here's the thing. It's so easy to make that claim against any judge. I mean, do you realize how easy it is? With a cop, it's like, okay, you can point to this cop was brutalizing someone he brought into custody and beat the snot out of him, or dealing drugs,
Which is why we have body cams.
Taking money. It's very easy. I'm saying it's right. And the body cams help us examine the bad behavior. Over here, so over here in the case of the context of judges and their quote unquote bad behavior, we're not talking about taking bribes.
Body cams on the judge.
So we're reading a decision. We're being like, this decision reads to me like you're probably engaging in political hackery. But in theory, any decision that the left could point to any decision that Justice Alito, Gorsuch, or anyone on the right wrote and said this was political hackery. They'd be wrong. It'd be a misinterpretation. But that's what I'm saying is there's a lot more ability to put a subjective read on something, which would invalidate, in theory, any judge that someone wanted to have removed.
So make it an exercise.
So what? Okay. Okay, fine.
So no, hold on. Give it for a second. So any case that was questionable or was already decided is immune to double jeopardy. So let's retry it again in law cases and in different, use it as an example for see how it would come out in different trials. Like use it as you go through law school, use these types of things to bring up certain points to and then see over time how the idea of it changes without changing the precedent, because we're only doing it in a school, but maybe we can reevaluate the position over time.
So you're saying so you're looking going forward, looking at a body of work of a particular judge.
Exactly. You got to be able to hold them accountable somehow. They can't just be infallible. Neither can police. Nobody can. Nobody's above the law, right?
Yeah, I just think that okay, so even going forward from today, so now when they come in to power, God forbid, in 2029, they'll look forward. They'll look at any decision that was written by Alito, Thomas, or anyone in the last 3 years, and they'll be like, "Oh, okay, well that was they only decide that way because they're politically biased, or because Alito is a MAGA guy, or whatever thing." That they'll be like that. They'll read what was actually a good faith decision and just pretend that it was made in bad faith for the purposes of removing someone that they don't like. It's a problem. It's a very difficult thing. That's why I'm saying you can have with a cop, it's a little bit easier because we can see things and be like, okay, that was just brutal. And that was just, you can see the brutality of what the person's doing, or you can see the corruption. The corruption is far more visible. They're stealing money. They're stealing drugs. They're,
Like what they did to Donald Trump?
Yeah, okay, fine. I'll tell you something. I actually think that Judge Chutkan, what she did there was what, and what Judge Engoron did. I think that
is he still gagged?
Is he still what?
Is Donald Trump still gagged?
I think he is.
His gag order?
I think
he's the sitting president. Are you telling me the sitting president still has an active gag order?
It's an interesting question that I don't think anyone knows the answer to. To be fair,
I'm asking you.
You're asking me. I asked Robert Gouveia his opinion as to whether he's still gagged or not.
I like him too. I watch him almost every day.
He's great.
He is 100%.
And
he kind of put me on to you a little bit, if I'm being honest.
No problem with that. He's phenomenal. I'll tell you what he I'll read to you what he said on that, because we were both. I was like, because I was like, should I try to go forward with this? Is he still gagged? Because he's not gagged, I'm never gonna. There's no way I'm gonna get.
It's the precedent. It's the precedent of course. It's the principle of the matter. Of course, it matters. That's the whole point.
No, I'll tell you that he said, whatchamacallit. I'll tell you what he said here. Robert Gouveia. Hey, Rob, I said to him, hey, Robert, do you have any thoughts about whether Merchan's gag order is still technically in effect, or whether it died by the imposition of a sentence? He said, I think it's done. Unconditional discharge would mean no penalties, including a gag, and he cannot have any ongoing criminal jurisdiction over him by his own admission and an urgency going into the White House, so it's done. No gag may effect would be my argument. So,
all right. So let me just throw a hypothetical out there for you.
Mm-hmm.
There's some guy in the background taking notes of every possible thing that he could have avoided, that would have violated the gag order, and because he's president, he's immune to all charges. But once he gets out, they try to hit him with charges.
Well, he's saying that he's not under the gag order. Well, Gouveia's position is that he's not under the gag order anymore. He says that,
he shouldn't be.
Right. No, I mean, he never should have been under a gag, to be
right.
fair.
I agree with that. Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
But I mean, the argument is that if in fact someone come along and say, hey, he said this in 2025, and that's a violation of the gag order, that the gag order died once he issued a sentence and said no penalty. No penalty implies there's no more gag. So that probably wouldn't be a thing. Anyway, I want to get on to other callers as well.
I'm sorry. I've been.
No, you've been great, Tony. Don't worry about that. But I appreciate the call, my brother. All right.
Thank you.
Have a good night, my friend.
You too, sir.
It's a tough question. It's a really tough question. I know a lot of people think like, well, they're going to do it anyway, and they probably will eventually. But I posted on Twitter that it's time for Congress to start ousting judges that don't follow the Constitution. I'm with you on that. It's such a dangerous road.
Call from
Terry with a T.
Terry with a T. How are you?
I'm back.
She's back.
I'm good.
What do you got?
I'm back. Okay. I don't know about going after judges. That makes me... I just think that's going to be turned around on us at some point in the future, and that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
However, what would it take to, direct these things to not necessarily a politically appointed type of person? In other words, if this one was done by, appointed by the other side, then they don't get to hear this because they're not neutral.
Yeah.
That's a question.
I know it's a question. So wait, so you're saying instead of it going to Jeanette Vargas, it would go to a Trump judge?
Yeah.
You always have to sort of imagine, the same way we're imagining, the bad behavior being turned back around on us. So now you're telling me that let's assume that Biden is letting the border fall apart, or some successor to, the next Democrat is basically tearing down the wall. So, and then he gets that president would get sued. Would you be comfortable with it being some Biden-appointed judge?
No.
So that's what you're saying should happen, isn't it?
Well, I know. I mean, I'm just trying to come up with a way. I mean, it without just nixing judges, I don't think that's going to do us any good. But at least while we're in office, it goes to a Republican appointed judge. Maybe not even a Trump appointed judge. Or do we still have any out there from olden days? I don't know. But getting rid of these judges, I don't know. That will come back and bite us. But I also don't think that politically they're neutral.
I agree with you. I agree with that. The neutrality of some of these judges seems greatly exaggerated.
Right. Okay. That helped us none at all. But anyway.
Yeah. I think I'm concerned that what we're going to end up coming up with out of this show is there is no good answer. There really isn't a good answer, because we just have some really lousy judges out there, and
yeah, and they'll do anything apparently.
Yeah.
Okay,
Tammy,
I'm going to see
Terry,
if anybody else can solve this.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate you.
All right,
have a good
bye.
night. Richard says, now a lawyer, first 6 years in the oil field in the Gulf of America out of high school. Next 45 years pounding nails. Good for you. Mansions, churches, high rises, built bridges. Very cool. Very cool. That doesn't mean you can't weigh in, though, Richard. We want to hear from you.
Call from
Petty Eddie.
Petty Eddie. Is that what you said? Petty Eddie?
That's what I said. Yep.
Right. How you doing, Eddie?
Yeah. I'm doing good. How about yourself, Joe?
Thank you. Can't complain. So what's your thought? Bad behavior?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Should we go after judges for bad behavior?
That's what I'm calling to say. I don't have a big detail, but I'm going to say it's a slippery slope. It's the old slippery slope. If we send that ball down the hill, we are really in trouble, I think, down the road. But at the same time, something has got to be done to make it so that judges don't feel that they can just take the laws into their own hands and not be fair about it. I don't have a good answer. And what's worse than that is I don't have a good feeling about what's coming in the future.
I think the other thing is that we're always afraid that the other side's going to start the slide down the slope if we don't.
I know.
It's kind of it's the prisoner's dilemma, right? Where it's they say you know what the prisoner's dilemma is, right? I don't remember exactly how it goes. I think it's if neither two defendants are who are charged with committing the crime together are put into a jail, are put into separate interrogation rooms. And
Okay.
if neither of them talk, they'll both get 2 years. And if one of them talks, the one who talks will get 1 year, and the other guy will get 7 years. So, are you better off talking or not talking? If they both talk, you're gonna get you'll both get 5 years. So you're better off like talking or not talking. And it's like, I don't know, like what's the other guy gonna do? And now the prisoner in the other cell, in the other interrogation room, is the Democrats, who have shown a proclivity for being really heinous and completely twisted and evil. So like you're sort of like, I don't like this tango.
Yeah, I think that's where probably a good lawyer from New York would probably tell you not to talk at all until the lawyer gets there.
Right. Nice. That's always true. So you're saying there's no answer here, though. They really, you know what? I think that's the reality, is that sometimes there is no answer, because it's like, who the hell knows the future? Who the hell knows the future?
Yeah, nobody knows. But I can guarantee you that if the Republicans do something, then the Democrats will counteract it. Dems will dem all the time.
Yeah.
Republicans will back down, but a Dem will dem, and it's not going to stop. And we're already making a huge snowball going down a hill, and I just don't know. I really don't see anything but a complete avalanche in our future. The two parties are never going to get along again after all of this tit for tat. So I'm black-pilled. I'm not what you would call.
Well, I'm a little bit more white-pilled. I think the Democrats have lost so much of their power. I think they've lost a great deal of their influence. I think we're seeing one Democrat after another start to turn on the Democratic Party and say, like, I shared a clip the other night of this black guy who was like, I'm done with the Democratic Party. I cannot believe when I'm seeing this corruption, they're standing up behind that as if there's nothing wrong with this. I have nothing left to say other than I'm done with you. I can't do this anymore. And that guy was actually brought on to Alex Jones. I saw a clip with him on Alex Jones, but he was cussing about the Democratic Party basically being so ridiculously wasteful. And I don't think he's alone. I think it's possible we might be here. I'll give you a white pill. We might be seeing the demise of the Democratic Party if their funding gets getting yanked away from them. New York Times being exposed that they were getting tons of money from USAID, and I think that we're at the start of hopefully some really good times here. So this is not the time to be black-pilled. We want an election. We've got a president who's aggressive, trying to enact a Make America Great Again, America First policies. He seems to be doing so far a phenomenal job of it and carrying through on his promises. This is the time to be optimistic.
I'm trying.
Don't get so down, Eddie. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. The good times are coming. The good times are coming.
Eddie's going to be petty. So, all right. I'll let you get on to the next call. Appreciate it. Bye.
Don't have time to shred the things we're looking at in the digital accounting system, AP and check records, even collected, deleted as I think that I don't think they're going to be able to delete stuff so quick. I think that there you go. It's totally not at all a cult type of cult. How are you, my brother?
Shavua Tov, good
Shavua
Tov. Much as I'd like to see the House of Representatives assert its constitutional powers, rather than impeach them for bad behavior, and I think this would be a wonderful turnabout, particularly since we're talking about dealing with the militarization. What's the term that they're using? politicization. You know, they're trying to get back at the Democrats for screwing us legally for practicing lawfare for the last 4 years.
Okay.
Have them prosecuted for deprivation of rights under color of law and actually prosecute them rather than remove them from the bench.
You can't prosecute them for making crap decisions, though.
It basically, why doesn't intent count? If they're corrupt,
It's impossible to show it. It's impossible to show intent. You'll never get
if they're corrupt, if the decision is politically corrupt,
how would you prove it? What evidence would show that this is politically corrupt?
fine, make the process be the punishment like they have done.
Yeah, but you sort of need to have a charge that you can bring that's not easy, quickly dismissible.
Oh, come on. Alvin Bragg. You know, turnabout. No, at what point is turnabout not fair play?
And you want to go
not
Engelmeyer for that? This guy you never heard of 48 hours ago? That's the judge you want to break out lawfare on?
What I'm saying is, unless they hurt, you know the story about little Johnny and Sally and his little sister pulling his hair?
No,
he complained to his mom. Sally keeps pulling my hair, and she says she's 4 years old. She doesn't know that it hurts. And then she hears Sally scream. She says, "What's going on?" She says, "She knows now."
Okay.
I mean, rather than do it politically through the House, to do it criminally.
So you want to see Pam Bondi going after these folks? And that I can get behind more. I can get behind that more. I'll tell you right now. I think Joe Biden should be prosecuted. I do. I think he should be. I think what he did was so terrible. As vice president, what he did was so terrible. I mean, you can make all sorts of claims about what he did when sitting in the White House. Although, frankly, I don't think any of us really believe he's the one who did any of those things.
I mean, they're all corrupt. I was just reading about another $500 million that's been funneled to this empty storefront in California.
Okay.
I mean, it's the amount of fraud and waste is
hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions. I saw this
$500 million with a B to one institution.
Yeah,
and these are all politically connected people.
You know, I saw this montage that I think Elon Musk put together, where there's a song because everyone's talking about having big balls right now. I don't know where that comes from, but basically, someone must have said something which went viral, and
the screen name of one of Elon's autists.
Is that what it is? Is that what it is? Okay, well, anyway, so now everyone is playing that AC/DC song, which is of that name, and they and Alex Jones put together a great montage of folks listing off all the wasteful spending. And I was thinking, this is I was thinking about opening up the show with it. The problem is that I think that I'm going to get clipped by AC/DC for playing the song if I actually, were to share it. But it's a great thing. I'm probably going to, I'm going to put it in locals. Let me get a hold of it and see. Let me see if I have it. If I saved it. Did I save the big balls thing? I got big balls.
By the way, Trump lied.
About what?
I feel perfectly fine. I am not sick of winning at all.
Yeah, I got.
Be well.
I'm gonna let you go, brother. But
I have a good week.
All right, take care, my friend. I found it here. I have it. I do have it. Okay, good. I'm glad I saved this. I'm gonna go into my locals right now. I know there's not too many people hanging out in the locals chat there, but that's okay. I'm gonna share it with you over here. You have to watch this video. I can't air it for y'all, but I'll share it over here in locals. Good Lawgic.locals.com in the live chat there. So I highly recommend checking it out. The list of things in that, I think I could probably play the middle of it because like the song is playing very low in the background. I can't play that part. Not that part.
Dollars to strengthen trans-led organizations to deliver gender-affirming health care in Guatemala.
$43 million on a gas station in Afghanistan that had no customers.
$43 million on a gas station in Afghanistan that had 0 customers. How is that possible? How is that possible? This is just the montage of listing of different people reading off some of the stuff from this list.
$20 million for Iraqi Sesame Street.
$4.5 million to combat disinformation in Kazakhstan.
In Kazakhstan. Disinformation in Kazakhstan. It's unbelievable.
$6 million for men who have sex with men in South Africa.
$2 million for Moroccan pottery classes.
$2 million
$2 million for Moroccan pottery classes.
for sex changes in Guatemala. $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia.
$17 million to promote inclusion in Vietnam.
$32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru.
$8 million to teach Sri Lankan journalists how to avoid binary gendered language.
$300 million.
What? I missed that one.
In Vietnam.
$32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru.
$8 million to teach Sri Lankan journalists how to avoid binary gendered language.
$8 million about Sri Lankan journalists avoiding gendered language.
$100 million to Reuters to attack Elon Musk. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. Billions to the corporate media to attack Trump and run the fake impeachment propaganda.
$330 million to help Afghanis grow crops. Crops.
$122 million of the USAID money was given to terrorists.
These people are lunatics.
So there you go. That's the song. You can see that it's yeah. It's quite a list. It's quite a big list. Quite a big list. What opportunities does Trump have to pack SCOTUS and all appeals court, especially the DC court? Play the long game. Trump Tower not built in a day. Yeah, packing the court. I'm not going to be on board with that. Democrats are trying hard to go against the will of people. They had broken their oath of office. The problem is we would know very well that they will. If you want that full song, by the way, I did drop the link in the locals chat, so you can just pop in there at goodlogic.locals.com. But yeah, they're doing stories about big balls and people are blackpilling. This is not time to blackpill. This is time to be happy. This is time to be happy. And I'm coming here telling you full speed ahead. Don't slow down. Keep going, Elon. Keep going, Elon. Go Doge, go Elon, go Trump. Keep going. Dig up more and more of this crap and let's expose it. Let's cut it out. Make sure the next continuing resolution, we don't have any more of this hot garbage. Keep going. Keep going. Unbelievable. 48 million for an Afghani gas station that was never used. It's unbelievable. Anyway, I think we're going to do a short show tonight and wrap it up over here. I wanted to get that out there. Keep going, Elon. Keep going, Doge. God bless you all. God bless Donald Trump and the United States of America. I missed this from Barrett Boy saying State of Idaho has an independent panel that receives complaints and potentially disciplines. Maybe for this level judge, some sort of disciplinary review might make sense. That's not bad. That's probably the best possibility. Disciplinary review for judges that seem to go rogue. Maybe suspend them for a time. I don't know. We need to brainstorm more on that. But I just wanted to get that out there to all of you. Drop Barracuda says, wait, so that means the Kamala's campaign cost in the realm of $5 billion and she still lost? Wait, how do you get to 5? I don't know how we got that. $3.5 billion? Who's that $3.5 billion? $1.5 billion. I don't know. All right. I'm going to wrap up over here. I'm not sure if I'm doing a show tomorrow. I'm going to have to see. Super Sunday. Depends whether I go out or not. Depends on the weather. Depends on a lot of things. If there's bad weather, maybe I don't go out. We'll see. So you'll find out about that at goodlogic.locals.com. That's goodlogic.locals.com. Make sure if you're here, like, share, subscribe, drop one of those freaking comments, one of those powerful comments that help trigger the algorithm and make YouTube show me a little more love. I'm on the cusp of dropping under 101,000 because YouTube, you aso. Lab meat is for they, them, not for you, and don't eat the bugs. Plane coming in for a landing. Good night, you all, and as always, Godspeed.